We don't have enough face customization in Rec Room, and as it turns out, I'm not the only person who thinks this. More than 1 year ago, I made a video titled I recreated Roblox Faces in Rec Room, and not only did that video get over 100k views, but since then, Rec Room has added new mouth and eye types which allow you to customize your face even more than you were before. And while that original video was one of my personal favorite videos that I've created on this channel, I also decided in that video not to recreate a ton of iconic Roblox faces, including the most favorited face in the game. So in this video, I want to go back and turn more Roblox faces into Rec Room faces to see how well they would work in Rec Room's art style. And since we started the original video with the face from the 2012 April Fool's hack, what better way to start this video than with another face from that same hack, that being the derp face. This is honestly one of my favorite faces in Roblox as it's just so unique. However, it's not even released and will most likely never release, which is unfortunate because it was actually made officially by Roblox, being published all the way back in 2011, unlike the other faces from the 2012 hack. And what's even crazier is that this face was actually updated in 2016. This is the original version, which doesn't look as clean as the new version that we have now. And since this face is so unique, I wanted to see how this face would look in Rec Room, and I honestly really like how it turned out. As you can see, I used one of the new eyes that we now have for this face, and these new eyes actually ended up being used in a few other faces, which surprised me a lot, but it makes sense. These eyes are really good. Also, I will admit, I did just trace the mouth from the original derp face onto the Rec Room face, and you will see that I also do this for a few other faces in this video, which I will obviously tell you when I get to those faces. And while that might be controversial, and I'm sorry if you don't like that, I honestly have no idea how I would have made the mouth otherwise, and I think that it just makes the faces look 10 times better than they could have. And speaking of, this next face I can tell you was not traced, and that is the snowman face. But before that, if you want to go to my profile at Werewolf and press the big support button, that would be amazing. It helps me out a lot. Okay, sorry, as I was saying, this face is very simple. It's just a few dots with a carrot nose, but the reason why I chose it is because I was very curious what it would look like in Rec Room, and as you can see, it looks exactly how you think it would. For the dots, I used the dot eyes, and for the carrot, I used one of the straight blank mouths that we have and just filled it in with orange. Also, as a bonus, I made a version with a white skin tone so that it looks more like a snowman because I thought it was funny and it kind of looks cool. Now, this next face actually confused me a lot, and that face is the sinister face. Just let me explain. You see, when you first look at the sinister face, the mouth looks like it's sticking out its tongue, and that's what I thought at first. However, if you look at the dynamic version of Sinister, you can clearly see that it's actually teeth. So because of this, I decided to make two versions. The first being one with the tongue sticking out, and the second being one with teeth. Now, I personally like both of them, but if I had to choose one, I'd say the one with the tongue looks the best in my opinion. With that being said, let me know what you think down in the comments, because next I want to talk about Playful Vampire. Playful Vampire has always been one of my most favorite faces in Roblox, and I would 100% buy it if it didn't cost over 100,000 Robux. This is one of the faces I'm sure you're probably surprised didn't make it in part 1, so I decided I should probably try to recreate it now. And honestly, it turned out a lot better than I thought it would. I even made another version without color, which you'll see a lot more in this video. And I also used one of the new mouths for this face, which probably isn't that obvious at first. However, when you use the shocked emote with this new mouth, you get this tongue out mouth as a result, and I ended up using that tongue for this face, which worked out perfectly. So while we're at it, let's go ahead and talk about Prankster. This face is very similar to Playful Vampire. The only difference really are the eyes and the fact that there's no fangs. And it should have been pretty simple, as I could have just used the file for Playful Vampire and just adjusted the eyes and got rid of the fangs. However, I somehow managed to overwrite the Playful Vampire face with something else, which in simple terms means that I now had to recreate Prankster from scratch. With that being said though, I'm sort of glad that happened because now it doesn't have the exact same mouth and eyes as Playful Vampire. And low-key, if that didn't happen, I would have just took the lazy route. So also, here's the version without color if you're curious. Anyways, let's move on to a face that doesn't look like Playful Vampire, that being the Tattletale face. This face is so interesting to me because you can tell from the face that it's supposed to look like a Tattletale face, and that's one of the main reasons why I picked this face. And I think I did a pretty good job of recapturing that because this face just looks annoying. I don't really know how to explain it, and I also made a second version of this face without color. However, I think think I like it with color better. Okay, next I want to talk about one of the rarest faces in Roblox, that being the D-Dotty smile. You've probably never even heard of this face. And that's because this face was created and given out to only one person, a South Korean YouTuber with over 2 million subscribers named Dotty, who has a Roblox account named D-Dotty-HS. This face looks really nice, so it kind of sucks that it's so limited, but either way, I wanted to try and recreate it in Rec Room, and I think I did a pretty good job. However, I do think the Roblox version is better. Also, again, I made a second version without color, and it just looks so weird, to be honest. I much prefer it with color. So next, I want to talk about a face that's pretty cursed, that being Crazy Happy. Like I said, it's very cursed, which is pretty much the only reason why I wanted to recreate it in Rec Room, and one look at the final recreation and I realized I should have picked a different face. So let's quickly move on, because next I want to talk about a pretty iconic face in Roblox, that being Squiggle. If you've played Roblox before, you've most likely seen this face worn a bunch, and I can see why, as it's pretty unique, which is why I wanted to recreate it in Rec Room. And as you can see, this is also one of the faces where I decided to trace the mouth. And I probably could have gotten away with not tracing the mouth, but it still turned out really good, so honestly, I'm glad I did. So let's next talk about another cursed face, Friendly Slyclaw. Once again, the reason why I chose this face is because I was really curious as to how it would look in Rec Room. I feel like a broken record at this point, and it did not disappoint. It still looks cursed, don't get me wrong, but at least it's not as cursed as another face in this video. So while we're talking about cursed faces, let's next talk about Beast Mode. Just let me explain. Roblox's Beast Mode actually has 4 different variants, and they are all pretty iconic as well as all very expensive. And in the Roblox version, they don't look cursed at all, as they fit in pretty well and are honestly one of my favorite faces. Again, I would buy it if it wasn't so freaking expensive. For the Rec Room version I created, however, it ended up looking pretty cursed. I ended up choosing the blue version to recreate, and honestly, it reminds me of that one meme image with the werewolf looking at a mirror. Like, come on, you can't see it, right? So let's next talk about a face that actually looks good in Rec Room, that being Awkward. This is another face that you have probably seen before, especially if you played Roblox back in like 2015, and I can see why, as it's well made and also pretty basic, which a lot of people, including myself, like. This is one of the first faces I created for this video, and is also one of my favorites. It turned out really good, as well as really accurate, especially the eyes. I didn't expect them to turn out as good as they did. It probably helped that it's pretty simple, so let's next talk about a face that isn't as simple, that being Madness Face. This face is pretty much the Epic face, but with the Roblox logo as eyes, and it is pretty unique. Now, I did the Epic face before making this face, and I'm sorry for teasing, I will get to the Epic face, but that ended up making the Madness face just a tiny bit easier. And I actually did something a bit unique for this face, as instead of using the Roblox logo for it, I decided to use the Rec Room token symbol for it. And I realize now that this looks more like a money-hungry face than a Madness face, so I'm just going to leave that conversation there and move on. The next face I want to talk about is Meanie, and this face is actually one of my personal favorites. The main reason is not only because the mouth reminds me of the mouth I made for my Rec Room character, but also just because it's very unique. Not only is it one of my personal favorite faces, but it is also one of the most expensive non-limited faces, being 5,000 Robux. Apparently, I just really like expensive faces. Now, as you can see, this face itself isn't as crazy as some of the other ones I've made. It is a mouth with fangs and angry eyebrows. It's not that special. However, I did decide to make an alternate version without the eyebrow, similar to my previous video with Stitch Face, and I really like how it looks. It could be a cool cosmetic mouth for Halloween, in my opinion. And speaking of Halloween, next I want to talk about Red Rar, which is kind of related to Halloween since the face has red eyes, and I realize now this transition isn't as good as I thought it would be. This face is very simple. It's actually a lot like a face I made in the previous video, Evil Skeptic. In fact, I may or may not have just copy and pasted the Evil Skeptic face and just replaced the mouth. And maybe that's lazy of me, but these two faces are so similar, if I didn't say anything, I guarantee you wouldn't have noticed. Anyways, let's next talk about a face that isn't just a copy and paste of another face, that being Winning Smile. Although now that I think about it, there's not only a different face that's very similar to the Winning Smile on Roblox already, but there's also a face with the same name just without the word "the" in front of it. Kinda weird. But as I was saying, this face is pretty uncanny and unlike the other faces in Roblox, which is the main reason why I wanted to recreate it. And as you can see on Rec Room, it looks as uncanny as it does in Roblox, although it does look more like the friendly smile, so oops. As ridiculous as this face looks, next I want to talk about a face that's even more ridiculous, that being Goof. Now this face also has a few different variants since it's a limited item, so I ended up choosing green for this because I haven't made a green face of this video yet. Goof is already pretty goofy looking. I mean, it's in the name, but still. So I was really curious as to what it could look like in Rec Room, and as you can see, it's also pretty goofy. I mean, let's be for real. When are you making a face like this? Oh yeah, and I also made a version without colors, which actually looks cool. Although I can't really make a non-color version of the next face, Mr. Bubbles. I mean, I guess I could, but it would probably look really weird. The name pretty much sums up what the face looks like. It's just a face with a bunch of bubbles, really simple, but I was still curious as to what it would look like in Rec Room. And as you can see, it looks exactly how I was imagining it. It's a face with, you guessed it, a bunch of bubbles. Crazy, I know. And that also means that I only have 3 faces left to show you guys, 2 of which are faces I'm sure you guys have been waiting on. So let's go ahead and show off the face that I'm sure nobody cares about right now, that being shiny teeth. I used to see this face everywhere a couple years ago, and it makes sense as it's pretty simple and very iconic. However, I never see this face anymore, which to be fair does make sense as there's a lot better faces out there now, especially since we have UGC faces. And that's the main reason why I wanted to recreate this face. However, as you can see, it looks very cursed in Rec Room. I'll just go ahead and say it, I did not do a good job with this face. Although if I made this face now, it would probably look the exact same, and I say that because I made almost all of these faces like 6 months ago. So if you're curious about if I write my scripts with AI, you can probably guess the answer now. But enough about that, let's get into the final 2 faces and the most iconic faces, starting with Super Happy Face. Looking back, I'm sure it's surprising that I didn't make this face back in part 1, especially when it's the most favorited face and the most favorited limited in the game, and it probably won't come as a surprise that I was actually planning on making this face back then. However, I decided against it solely because I was afraid I wouldn't do it justice, mainly because I didn't really know how I would go about doing the blush. But now that the video has gotten over 100k views and then I'm now making a part 2, I feel like I kind of have to now, especially with how iconic this face is. So here it is. As you can see, I just recreated the lines from the blush using a bunch of Rec Room straight mounts, and honestly, I thought this face would turn out way worse, so I'm happy that it at least looks alright. And in case you're wondering, this is how it looks without color. I think it's pretty obvious, but I prefer the version with color. So with that, let's get into the last face for this video, and probably the last Roblox face that I'm going to recreate, as I don't really see myself making a part 3 unless this video gets over 10,000 likes. Come on, let's make it happen. Now this face isn't just a Roblox face, it's also an iconic meme face, and by now you can probably guess what this face is. It's the epic face, also known as the awesome face. The fact that this face is based off of an internet meme already makes it pretty iconic, but it's also pretty rare considering it was only available back in 2010 through a gift box, and it has never gone limited since. This face was the first face I made for this video, and as you can see, it looks pretty spot on. It looks like the epic face if it was in Rec Room, which was my goal. And on top of that, this is what it looks like without color. Again, I like the colors better. And with that, this video is over. So if you want to see more videos like this one, I'd recommend watching this video where I go and fix every Rec Room original. Thanks for watching.